Hello, and welcome to an unusual chronicling of Warhammer 40k's grim history from the beyond. I'm Zeckthar, and today we have an interesting quirk from the Grim universe.
Now, my last Vox about the peculiar rogue trader, Bartholomew Bilko, was his meeting with the young Commissar Lysander Brine. Yet, I was so excited to get into Bilko and his many adventures with Brine, I forgot to mention a few things. First off, like I mentioned in my last Vox, while the majority of the information I have gathered is from the time he sailed with Lysander Brine, I have found other articles through my searches, which fill in some of the holes Lysander failed to fill in. So, on this Vox, we will be looking into the two astartes that traveled with Bilko, Hans and his brother Franz, who happen to be Blackshields. Now, keep in mind, I'm sure Brine would have panic attack if he knew exactly what the Blackshields are, but let me fill you guys in on his ignorance. Now, the term Black Shield came to be used during the Horus Heresy in the early 31st millennium to cover a wide range of Space Marine outcasts, marauders, and those Legiones Astarte units of uncertain allegiance or origin. You see, as we have discussed before, the traitor legions who fell to chaos needed to be purged of loyalists. The greatest example of this was the Purge of Esfand III, where the loyalists of the Sons of Horus, Emperor's Children, World Eaters, and Death Guard were destroyed almost to the man. But what of the other traitor legions, you may ask? Despite the paucity of records, accounts of small war bands that were once part of the known traitor legions fighting independently persisted throughout the war. In some cases, outcast forces proudly bore their original colors, and may have regarded themselves as the true inheritors of their legions. This can perhaps be explained, at least in part, by persisting stories and evidence long since suppressed of midnight-clad warriors and defaced Night Lord's heraldry savagely attacking traitor forces, or the reoccurring reports of multiple Space Marine strike forces, seemingly in the resurrected livery of the Dusk Raiders, thwarting the Iron Warriors of Quiberon and the Melanchi's fall. Another example would be the 34th millennium of the Emperor's Children, the Death Eagles, bearing the purple and gold of their parent legion with pride, refusing to abandon their original heraldry. It is thought that the Death Eagles millennial clashed with their traitor kin at Leith and the Revorth Keep in the Coronid Deeps, but their ultimate fate, like that of so many others, remains unknown. Likewise, also should be considered the long-denied evidence of a great company of the Space Wolf legions, bearing the symbol of the Serpent's Eye, slaughtering millions at Neo-Cadiz in 8.M31, or of a company of Astartes present at the Siege of Mosea, bearing the hybrid arms and panoply of the Iron Hands and the Sons of Horus legions both. These are merely a handful of still infamous cases, but there are many more unsubstantial or simply now forgotten, which paint a more complex and uncertain picture of this great civil war than is normally accounted. Further to this, and perhaps an even more sinister enigma, are the persistent reports of Space Marine forces appearing bearing no sign or seal of heraldry, or origin at all. Or stranger yet, heraldry which bears no mark known during the Great Crusade. A handful of extant accounts, now sealed beyond all retrieval, makes references to a loosely termed and non-formal class of Astartes warrior known as the Blackshields. Now, the majority of Blackshields appear to have been of the Legiones Astartes, though some may have once have belonged to other factions. In some cases, the term was a literal description, the warriors having obscured the livery of their parent legion, painting some or all of their armor's panels black to hide former associations. Although whether the Black Legionaries were merely turncoats, or, as some have whispered, perhaps raised by the traitors from the chimeric gene seed of the Esfand V dead for their own terrible purposes, none can say for certain. Now, as you can tell, the Blackshields are not a consistent or singular whole group, but factions within factions. As far as I can tell, these factions can be funneled into three different categories. The first are those that remain true to the Imperium, yet were originally part of the traitor legions. Though their true numbers remain unknown, they cannot have been great, for most of the traitor primarchs proved horrifyingly willing and able to purge their legions of those genetic sons they suspected would not stand alongside them against the Emperor. It is well known in Imperial scholars now that the Sons of Horus, Death Guard, World Eaters, and Emperor's Children were all purged by the hands of their own generic fathers at Esfand III, while it appears that Lorgar rid his word-bearer legions of such elements at a much earlier point. Of the other traitor legions, it can only be assumed that similar fratricides were enacted, although none appear to have been carried out with a complete effectiveness, for there were ever detached units serving far afield or beyond communications range. What trauma such warriors experienced upon learning of their master's treachery can only be imagined, and the bloodshed that ensued between brother legionaries must have been every bit as terrible as the slaughter at Esfon III. Many of these warriors who escaped the betrayal of their kin fled into the darkness and were never seen again, while others embarked upon short-lived campaigns of bloody vengeance, determined to sell their lives dearly and consumed by hatred for a galaxy in which they no longer had a place. The second group I like to simply call the disavowed. It is a truth that sits ill with many who are a party to such knowledge that not all Blackshields were the sons of traitor primarchs. The warrior lodges had spread their pernicious philosophies far and wide in the years prior to the events of Esfon III, and few indeed were the legions entirely unaffected by their hidden workings. Indeed, it is notable that in some bands of Blackshields, adherence to the tenets of various warrior lodges remained strong, and some were even accompanied by small covens of Divinite lodge priests. How many Blackshield bands were in fact renegade elements or otherwise loyalist legions, or how many individual Blackshield warriors in the ranks of the Marauder Squad were secretly traitor sons of Guilliman, Dorn, or Russ, or any other loyal son of the Emperor is a matter that even now has yet to be fully accounted. Now, unfortunately, the last group is simply known as the Damned. Despite the rejection of visible Legion heritage, most Blackshields remain nonetheless recognizable as Space Marines. A small number, however, stretch such of definition to a point where onlookers may not have taken them for the product of the Emperor's vision at all. Throughout the Horus Heresy and beyond, accounts of astartes fallen to physical mutation persisted, hinting of a creeping instability in gene seed purity, corruption of the implantation process, exposure to certain influences, or even deliberate tampering with the astartes' genetic template. At first sight, these warriors might appear blessed of superior strength, speed, or resilience, but invariably they proved unstable in other ways. Some were prone to physical or mental collapse in the heat of battle, while others experienced spontaneous and uncontrolled mutation under stress, their limbs distending into horrific forms as bones reknit and muscles distorted, battle plates splitting apart in the process. Some were indistinguishable in appearance from any other astartes, yet possessed of such an unnatural mind or aura that others could not stand their presence, and with prolonged exposure would be driven by the inexplicable urge to strike them down. It has been suggested by some Imperial scholars that not every band of such genetic aberrations classified as Blackshields were truly outcasts from the other legions. Some may actually have been deliberately created, in secret with one of the legions, and then released into the war-torn galaxy as living weapons of mass destruction. Created ignorant of their heritage, such forces would have reaved across the stars in pursuit of some implanted imperative, burning fiercely, albeit briefly, in the depths of the Horus Heresy's Age of Darkness. Now, Hans and Fron are part of this first group that had remained true to the Emperor, yet understood that their legion, nay, their brothers, had betrayed humanity, and they would not be recognized as friend to their brethren or the Loyalist chapters. From what I have researched, they were either part of the Iron Warriors, or perhaps the Alpha Legion. The reason I say this is because there was a couple of recorded logs during the 33rd millennium that mentions a Hans and Fron. Yet unusually, both recordings take place around the same time. One around the Maelstrom and the Ultima Segmentum, and the other actually outside the orbit around Cadia. Both instances, they appeared on a ship that was being boarded by Chaos Space Marines, and the Ultima by the Alpha Legion, around Cadia and the Segmentum Obscurus, Iron Warriors. Why either could be Hans or Fron comes down to a couple of points. First off, Hans and Fron are described by Brian to be almost identical in size as well as appearance, which leads me to believe they are Alpha Legion. From the log I read near the Maelstrom, a civilian ship was boarded by Alpha Legion, yet once they boarded, they treated the crew and passengers fairly well, only demanding fuel to continue on in whatever dark quest they were on. As they left 2 Space Marines behind, each in black armor. Throughout the rest of the transit, the captain got to know the 2 slightly, and in his recordings he mentions a single name, Hans. When they disembarked on Badab, the captain sent for the Adepta Arbites, But by the time they arrived and forced the ship, the black armored marines had disappeared. Meanwhile, in records I found of what took place in the Segmentum Obscurus, on the ship known as the Expedialis, it was about to jump from Cadia's space when they were attacked by a Chaos Space Marine frigate and boarded. Though the crew of the Expedialis put up an epic fight, they were no match for the foul Iron Warriors, who began to decimate the crew. It wasn't until 2 warriors in solid black armor joined the fray and began to help the crew take back the ship, room by room. They held the Iron Warriors back until an Imperial ship, the Rantonus, a cruiser under the command of Ricus Higsby, heard their distress call and came to support. As the Iron Warriors' ship disembarked, they spat curses through their voxes at the beleaguered Expedialis, one of which seemed strange to the captain, so much so that he recorded it.
"Damn you, Franz! Damn you to the pits of hell!"
Interestingly enough, after the skirmish, the 2 black armored marines stayed with the Expedialis until they reached their destination, and then they disappeared from the records. After this, they disappeared completely until the 36th millennium, when they joined Bilko's crew. Now, we will get into this in time, but one of Bilko's friends is a collector of ill repute, a Necron by the name of Trazyn the Infinite. Now, friend might be too strong of a word, more of a friendly accomplice. Yeah, accomplice would probably be a better word. Bilo used Trazyn for gathering information, as well as collecting credits, and in return he would help the Necron gather artifacts from all across the universe. During his first gatherings for Trazyn, he noticed 2 astartes in the Necron's museum, dressed in solid black. Intrigued, he asked the Necron who or what they were. Not needing any more persuasion to talk about his grand treasure trove, Trazyn explained what the Blackshields were, and how he came to acquire them. Impressed by the 2, Bilo requested the 2 instead of his usual fee. At first, Trazyn was not having any of it. After all, these were the only 2 Blackshields he had in his entire catalog. Yet, somehow, Bilo convinced the Necron to give him the Blackshields, which is somewhat confusing. In broken logs from Bilo's own writings, he states that he won them in a game of chance. Yet later he mentions offering to get Trazyn a whole band of Blackshields to replace the 2 he was taking. Personally, the second option seems far more likely. But regardless, Trazyn eventually agreed, and that's how Hans and Fron joined Bilo's crew. Well, that's all I got time for today. Join me next time as I give you a little understanding on who Bilo is, or dare I say, was, before he met Bride. Hope you all enjoyed this one. If you did, feel free to comment, follow, and subscribe. Have a great day, and as always, this is Zeckthar, signing off.